notification of this to appear on the screen. Okay, the meeting is now recording and streaming, so I'll begin by taking the sederant for the Finance and Corporate Resources Committee on Wednesday the 17th of March 2021. Alec Allison.
Here.
John Anderson.
Here.
Walter Brogan.
Present.
Graham Campbell.
I'm here.
Peter Craig. No. Maureen Devlin.
Here, Carol, thanks.
Isabel Dorman.
Here.
Joe Fagan.
Here.
Grant Ferguson.
Here. Here.
Okay, sorry, Jerry Gray.
Here.
Ian Harrow. No. Eric Holford.
Here.
Graham Horn.
Here.
Eileen Logan.
Yes.
Joe Lowe. No. Monique McAdams.
Here.
Catherine McClyman.
Here.
Hugh MacDonald.
Here.
Mark McGeever.
I'm here.
Jim McGuigan.
Here.
Gladys Miller.
Here.
Maura Zack.
Here.
John Ross. No. Colette Stevenson.
Here.
Jim Wardhaw.
Here.
Jared Wark.
Here.
Thank you. Do I have any other councillors that have joined since I started taking the sederant? No. Okay. Officers present today are Paul Manning, Craig Ferguson, Tom Little, Geraldine McCann, Kay McVeigh, Jackie Taylor, Brian Tees, and myself, Carol Lyon. I'll hand back to yourself, Chair.
Thanks very much, Carol. Can I ask if there's any declarations of interest? No? That takes us on to item 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. It's pages 5 to 12. Can we agree the minute?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. It takes us on to item 3, which is the minute of the meeting of the appeals panel. It's pages 13 to 14, and it's from the 11th of February. Can we agree that minute?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Excuse me.
Chair, there's a hand up. I think it's Eric.
Sorry, Eric.
Just a very minor point, but in item 4 on that, the use of a gendered pronoun was probably not compatible with it being anonymised properly.
Was that the minute of the appeal panel, Eric?
Yes. Sorry, correct. Yes.
Kay, can you respond to that?
Sir, thank you, Chair. Sorry, your question was around the 4th item. I take it the line you're referring to is the first item on that?
Yes.
An employee against
her. Should perhaps be if it's anonymised, it shouldn't be a gendered pronoun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take that back because it could be there, but I would say from a data protection perspective, you've not through this had the ability to identify an individual. So I take the point that you're saying. We'll have a think about that.
Thanks, Kay. Thanks, Eric. It takes us on to items for monitoring, and item 4, the revenue budget monitoring 2020-21 is on pages 15 to 26, and Jackie Taylor is going to take us through that.
Thanks, Chair. So as Chair said, this is our revenue budget monitoring report, taking us up to the 29th of January 2021. As usual, if I take you to section 5 on page 16, this is where we cover the financial implications. And at 5.1, we report on our probable outturn position. This is our forecast for the year. And we're reporting that we're expecting an overspend of £6.439 million. Now, before anybody panics, that includes the costs forecast for our response to the pandemic. And you can see that at section 5.2. They were expecting those costs in relation to the resource to be £6.409 million. So of that overspend that I reported a second ago, the vast majority is in relation to response to the pandemic. There's only a £30,000, a very small overspend for the rest of the spend that the resource is making. As always, the appendices, which start on page 18, cover the detail for the resource as a whole, and then individual service budget positions showing any explanations for variances. And as I've been reporting all year, at Appendix I, there is a particular appendix just for spend in relation to responding to the pandemic. If I can take you back then to the recommendations, we're asking that the forecast is noted and the position is noted. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Are there any questions? Thanks. Can we agree the report?
Agree.
It takes us on to item 5, which is the capital budget monitoring 2019-2020, and that's on pages 27 to 30. And Jackie's going to take us through that as well.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the same time period up to the 29th of January 2021, and this time we're reporting on our capital budget. Again, section 5 covers the financial implications, and we're reporting there that our programme for the year for the resource is £3.282 million. Spend to the 29th of January is £1.563 million. Over on page 28 at section 5.2, we cover our expected spend for the year, our outturn, and we're expecting a relatively small underspend of just under £400,000 at this point in time. That relates to our project around IT infrastructure, and that merely reflects the fact that some of the spend will fall into the next financial year. It's a minor timing issue. That budget will follow and meet those costs into next financial year. Appendix A on page 29 gives some further details around the budget and spend to the 29th of January. So again, Chair, taking us back to the recommendations, we're asking that the position is noted. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Have we got any questions? Thanks very much. Can we agree to note the report?
Agree.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us on to item 6, which is the Finance and Corporate Resources Workforce Monitoring. That's November and December 2020, and it's on pages 31 to 38. And Kay is going to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. This is our regular workforce monitoring report. This first report is just in relation to finance and corporate resources. So to take you through the items within the report, section 4, we've got the absence statistics, and you can see there for this resource, the absence figure for December was 2.8%, and that's down in comparison with the previous month and the previous year. And that's giving us a projected absence rate of 3%. For the year 2021, or 6.1 days if you want to consider that per individual. As usual, there's occupational health to help support employees maintain attendance at work or conversely come back from a period of absence. We had 42 referrals over the period. And in relation to the other items in the report, there are no particular items there to draw to your attention, and I'm asking that the workforce monitoring report items be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Kay. Is there any questions? Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us on to the council-wide workforce monitoring, again November, December, and that's on pages 39 to 60, and Kay's going to take us through that one.
Thank you, Chair. This is a workforce monitoring report covering the same period, but this time for the whole of the council, so a lot more data within it. So in terms of attendance statistics at section 4, you can see the council's absence rate for December was 5.6%, down in comparison with the previous month, and down very slightly in comparison with the previous year, giving us a projected absence rate for the council of 4.4% or 9.4 days. Of interest within this section, you can see there in terms of the reasons for absence changing predominantly as a result of the COVID environment that we're in. So normally I would be reporting psychological and musculoskeletal absence being the main reasons for absence across the council. Through COVID, we're now seeing psychological and respiratory conditions as the main reasons for absence, so not entirely unexpected given where we're at. Psychological conditions seeing an increase in comparison with the previous year. Respiratory conditions going up quite significantly, but conversely musculoskeletal conditions coming down, and other conditions that you would expect to see at this time of the year, the stomach, bowel, etc., infections, again decreasing quite significantly, which we would probably attribute to the increased hygiene factors that are in at this point in time trying to combat COVID. So you can see narrative within the report about where we've got to with respiratory absences. So we started off in March last year, we probably had a bit of a peak that had come down over the summer, but again started to increase again as we got into autumn, and they're still sitting quite high at this point in time. Within the report, I've given you the council's overall absence as it relates to COVID at a point in time. So in the 10th of February there, it was 5.65% absence, with 1.53 of that relating to COVID-19, either directly through sickness or through special leave. Our most recent figure, which is hot off the press today, is 5.37, with a smaller number, 1.2 relating to COVID absence. So perhaps again reflective of the changes in figures that we can see through this month. We had anticipated through the pandemic that we would see a rise in psychological absence, and probably last summer we were going against trend because that was coming down. But again, we've seen that begin to increase from the autumn onwards. And you can see again in the narrative, just under 10% of our referrals in December were due to anxiety around COVID, and that's how people were expressing it. So at section 5, you can see the support we've put in place through occupational health. So a fair number being referred through medical examination now, so we're back up to full speed with that. A decrease in terms of physiotherapy, reflective of the fact our musculoskeletal absences come down, but conversely an increase in terms of those being referred to our employee support officer, again matching the psychological absence that we've got. Section 6, I take you through the accidents and incidents that there are within the council, and those have decreased quite dramatically in comparison with the previous year, again probably reflective of where we're at in the services that we're providing at this point in time. Other than that, the main point probably to note in terms of this report is round about our leavers and turnover percentage. So you'll know I continually report that we're quite low in terms of turnover and in general. So for this period, our labour turnover was 0.3%, giving us a projected figure of 2.3% for the year. So very low. Again, probably reflective of the position that we find ourselves in terms of the economic environment at this point in time. We did manage to catch nearly a third of those who left in order to get an exit interview. Section 9 takes you through our recruitment monitoring, and we had over 3,500, or just round about 3,500 applications over the period, with 210 coming from disabled candidates, 69 of whom were shortlisted for interview, with 12 being appointed. We had 149 candidates from a Black and ethnic minority background, 26 of those were shortlisted and 12 were appointed. And of the applicants who declared, we also had 22 veterans. 5 of those were shortlisted for interview, but unfortunately on this occasion none were appointed. Happy to address any questions related to the content of this report, Chair.
Thanks very much, Kay. Joe, you've got a question?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. I think for some time, and I understand this was raised at the Social Work Committee this morning as well, but for some time we've been observing these absence trends in social work, and particularly in relation to the manual workers in social work. They're set out in Appendix 6. Now, they, as we expected, exceed the figures for the council as a whole. They are going up, and they've been going up since before COVID. Now, I took a look at the appendices. So for financial year 2021, the average days per employee lost to absence social work is 13.5, and that's versus 9.4 for the council as a whole. And obviously it's highest amongst, it will be highest amongst manual workers in social work. Also saw that Appendix 9 indicates that the number of medical referrals has increased, and it seems to be social work that's driving the increase in the number of medical referrals. So I think from previous discussions, I think that it's more than just an absence management issue. It's about the ageing workforce, it's about the nature of the work that they do. And obviously these are workers that over the past year have been in the front line in the pandemic. So my question really is twofold. It's first, and it maybe relates to some of what Kay was describing there. It's firstly, is it possible just now to just get an update on if there are any particular issues that are coming out of that element of the workforce this year, and what are we doing to support them? And then I really think it might be worth returning to the second point, would be returning to these issues around how we strengthen the workforce as a whole. So are we seeing more flexible retirement when people get to the end of their careers? And actually, we've done it before, but are we looking again at how we learn from our experiences of the past 12 months to recruit younger people into social care and into those frontline jobs where we have an ageing workforce at present?
Thanks, Jo. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Probably I'll take those in reverse order because it's probably more straightforward. So in terms of, yes, you're correct. The age profile of that particular workforce, it is predominantly female, predominantly an older age range, and with that will come particular health issues that will be impacting on the absence. We have been addressing in terms of our workforce planning how we bring in a younger workforce within there. So you'll be aware we've got our modern apprenticeship programs, and we've been going through quite a substantial number there to try and bring more young people into the workforce to address some of those issues. You're quite right to point out that it's an area of our workforce that has been working very hard throughout the pandemic. It's an area where people have been absolutely out and doing their day job, where perhaps others have been under lockdown or working from home or other arrangements. So I think we're seeing a bit of that within the workforce as a whole. Similarly, we've got, because of the age of a certain part of that workforce, we've also got people with kind of underlying vulnerability in terms of their own health conditions. So we've got a number of shielded, but also those who are not in the shielding community but quite vulnerable. So we've been taking quite a proactive approach to contact them and make sure that we've got proper arrangements to try and keep them safe and keep them feeling safe, because sometimes it is very much about perception. The health and social care workforce have got, I think, quite a bit of national support in terms of interventions, access to psychological supports, etc. We've also got our own psychological supports. One of the things we're having a look at right at this point in time is to try and make that more readily accessible to frontline workers. So, we can have good online portals, etc. But it's about making sure the workforce have got the time and the ability to access that at a time that suits them. So we're working on all those strands, Councillor Fagan, and very much aware of the different needs of that particular group. I hope that answered your question.
Thanks very much, Kay. Hugh?
Thanks, Chair. Kay, I'm really pleased to see the number of exit interviews starting to increase, and it seems to be a steady rise as we're going forward. With that in mind, with the extra ones that we're able to actually, I suppose, assess, are we seeing any emerging themes from that? And is there anything to suggest that we have pockets or areas of service or locality that is driving that number up? And is there anything that would suggest that there are issues that we need to address in terms of retaining our workforce in those areas?
Yeah, I would say in terms of the exit interviews, there's nothing unusual coming out of the exit interviews that we wouldn't have anticipated through what a manager would report in terms of their reasons for turnover. So nothing particular in there that would draw your attention. We do keep a very close eye on turnover because we've obviously got to think about our workforce planning issues. So we look at the areas where we have high turnover. Some of those, it's just the transient nature of that particular employment. So that if you're, for example, if you're in my team, we don't have a high turnover figure. If you're, say for example, within another team in the council that perhaps people would move on from, they have got a more significant turnover figure. So I'm not seeing anything particular that we need to address, but we do keep a close eye on the particular content of any of the exit interviews.
Thanks very much, Kay. Mo?
Thank you, Chair. Kay, I'm looking at the figures and I'm just going through the figures, the recruitment figures. As I see it, if you correct me if I'm wrong, the applications from the total number of applications for white applicants, the success rate was 9.2%, and from the interview stage at 32.4%. And for disabled, it was 6.65% from applications, and the ones interviewed was 15.9%. And ethnic minorities, that was 6.3% for applications, and interviews after interviews is 22.8%, and for veterans is 0% altogether. We've spoken about this before, and in fact we are doing work in the equity group, but it's still concerning that the figures, there seems to be an imbalance on the percentages.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we have got the work of the equity working group, which we'll bring back in here, particularly in relation to Black and ethnic minority applicants. I think probably in thinking through the stats you were quoting there, there's a relatively small number, for example, of veteran applicants within that. So when you're looking at small numbers like the veteran numbers, it's really hard to draw very much from the percentage in just the one short period. So I'd probably want to see how that develops over a number of reporting periods and check and see what the trends are there. But obviously through the equity working group, we'll be addressing how we can be more proactive on the Black and ethnic minority applicants and see if we can encourage more coming through there. But we'll do that through the group.
Chair, if we can come back. The other one that is concerning is the disabled, because as I looked at the figures again, 6.65% from total number of applications and 15.9% from interviews. That is quite alarming as well. And I think we are doing good work with the equity group, but I think we need to maybe look at the disabled side as well, because there seems to be a huge imbalance there as well.
Yeah, apologies, Councillor Razik. I should have mentioned disabled candidates as we were going through there. So for disabled applicants, they have a guaranteed interview if they're meeting the essential criteria for the post. So they'll get you would expect a proportion to come through there through the guaranteed interview scheme. But conversely, once they're interviewed, they are competing with people who meet both the essential and desirable, generally the requirements for any particular post. So that has been a feature in terms of disabled applicants for quite a considerable period of time because of that guaranteed interview aspect. It skews the percentage.
Thanks very much, Kay. I understand that came from the double tick. I actually was thinking that the accidents would go up because they say that the biggest percentage of accidents happen in the home, and for everyone that's working from home and tripping on slippers. Thank you very much. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Right, that will take us next to item 8, which is Treasury Management Activity. This is the third quarter review, and it's pages 61 to 68, and Jackie Taylor's going to take us through that.
Thanks, Chair. So as you say, this is our third quarter report covering the period to the 31st of December 2020. The report takes the same format as previous reports. Section 4 covers our update on market performance. There's no update since the last report. The bank rate hasn't moved from 0.1%. Section 5 covers the debt management and borrowing strategy. If I can take you over to table 1 on page 62, that shows our position on borrowing, and at 5.6 we're reporting that we haven't taken any new borrowing so far this year. Instead, cash balances have been used to fund capital spend. We will have to take that borrowing in due course. At section 6, we start to talk about our investment activity. So this is where we deposit our funds. 6.3 reminds committee that we do undertake significant scrutiny of any counterparty that we place money with, and we work with our treasury management advisors to do that. That includes information on credit ratings, and I'll come back to that in a second later on in the report. But if I can take you on to page 63 in table 3, this is where we show where we have deposited money to the period to the 31st of December. And again, replicating what I've reported in previous reports, our money is placed predominantly in the UK government deposit account, in other UK local authorities, and also in the Bank of Scotland and the Royal Bank of Scotland. The average interest rate that we achieve is shown in the right-hand column of table 3, and as we would expect, interest rates that are achievable for deposits remain low as the bank rate remains low. Section 7 continues the theme of how we manage risk in our deposits, and again at 7.2 a reminder that we set an annual investment strategy every year, and that includes details on how we do manage risk for our permitted deposits and investments. And I referred earlier to credit ratings, and on page 64 we've got 3 tables there that show for each of the 3 main credit rating agencies the ratings that they are giving to the counterparties that we've deposited money with. And what that shows is summarised at section 7.5, and it shows that over 86% of our deposits are made with counterparties of a very high credit quality, and that's the UK government and other local authorities, with the balance being made with deposits in the Royal Bank of Scotland and the Bank of Scotland. Over on page 65, we cover our next quarter investment plans, and they simply replicate what we've been doing all year. In section 9, we cover our treasury management indicators. We're required to report on certain of our treasury management indicators in this report, and those indicators are set at the start of the year to contain our treasury function within certain limits to manage risk. They're shown there on page 65 and into page 66, and I can report, as I usually do, that all of our indicators are within the set limits. So if I could just take you back to the recommendations, we're asking that the report's noted. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Is there any questions? Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's on table 3, and it's just an observation, but maybe needs a comment as well. We've got 20.05% deposits in the deposits in UK local authorities. And yet that actually has the highest average interest rate. Now, I'm going to try and answer my own question here. Maybe Jackie can actually confirm this. Is that down to the fact that these investments or deposits have a maturity term on them, which might be a lengthy maturity term, or is it some other reason?
You're correct, they can vary in deposit term, and we would be more comfortable having a longer term deposit with another local authority because we have more comfort, I suppose, in a local authority than perhaps in a bank or building society. It could also be in relation to how, I'm going to say, desperate another local authority might be to access cash, and they might be willing to offer just a little bit more in terms of interest. Whilst I would always look to get the maximum interest that we can from deposits, other local authorities aren't a consistent place that I can go to deposit money. It really is dependent on who's looking to take money from us at any given time. So whilst we'll maximise other local authorities, it isn't something that, you know, I could just replicate and replace all of our other deposits with other local authorities. But you are correct in your response that it can be to do with the terms that we're depositing over.
Right. I won't bother asking questions. I'll just answer them myself in future.
That's a good thing. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jim. Alex?
Thanks, Chair. Jackie, on table 1, the borrowings, are any of that on a fixed rate, or is all the borrowings we have covered by the at 5.3, the cheaper fund?
The cheaper fund, the certainty rate, is at a fixed rate. The vast majority of our borrowing is through the PWLB, the Public Works Loans Board, and that is at a fixed rate. What we're able to do is access this slightly cheaper rate, this 0.2% reduction in the standard rate, because we provide some information to HM Treasury. That information is simply how much we expect to borrow. So any borrowing that we're taking, you know, just now we would take at that cheaper rate from the PWLB at a fixed term.
Supplementary, Chair. Therefore, have we considered at all paying back some of the borrowing we have early that is at a fixed higher rate and taking out new borrowings at a lower rate? Or are we not able to do that?
We are able to cash in old debt and replace it with new debt that you would expect to be cheaper. However, there are penalties to pay. And what we do on a regular occurrence is to check whether there is any financial benefit in doing that. So if we were to go and try and pay off debt that is at a much higher interest rate because it was maybe taken out 10, 15 years ago, we will have a penalty to pay on that. And that wipes out any benefit that you have of taking on that cheaper debt.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Can we agree to note the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us on to the item for decision, item 9, and it's revenue collection and approval of write-offs. It's on pages 69 to 74, and Craig Ferguson's going to take us through that. Thanks,
Okay.
Craig.
Thank you very much, Chair. The purpose of the report is to advise committee on the collection and performance to 31st of January and to advise of the position regarding the business rates incentivisation scheme to the end of Q3, and thirdly to seek approval for write-offs. Section 4 of the report confirms income levels have obviously been affected as a result of the health pandemic. It confirms that the activity in respect of collection was obviously reduced during the first 4 months of the financial year, and also confirms the increase in the support being provided through council tax reduction. Collection targets themselves were reviewed for this financial year in light of the expected impact of the pandemic on collection levels, and these revised levels are the ones reported on in the report today. Section 5 of the report confirms the current collection performance across all income streams is ahead of current target, but again, obviously in relation to the comparisons to last year, are certainly behind. Section 6 confirms the collection performance in respect of arrears activity, again seeing collection performance ahead of in-year targets, but again behind comparable with last year. Section 7 of the report provides an update in relation to the business rates incentivisation scheme, confirming no targets have been set for this year, with it possible the scheme may well be suspended. Section 8 details the proposed write-offs against the various income streams, including council tax, non-domestic rates, and also sundry debt. I can refer committee back to Section 2 of the report and ask collection performance is noted, the position in respect to the business rates incentivisation scheme is noted, and the proposed write-offs as listed are approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Craig. Any questions? I'll approve the report.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. That takes us on to, normally we would take the items for noting, we'd agree to collectively. However, given these dark days, I know it's sunny outside, but this is such a good news story and I just thought we'd like to cover it. It's item 10. It's the Youth Guarantee and Kickstart Employability Programme, workforce implications, and it's on pages 75 to 78. And Kay is going to take us through that. Thanks, Kay.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction, Chair. Always pleased to bring a little sunshine into people's lives. But it is a good news story, this. We've obviously been thinking a lot about the impact of the pandemic, and as has everybody else, in terms of unemployment in our area. And this is a very positive action that has been taken. So we've been giving some funding. Folk will know young people aged 16 to 24 have been disproportionately impacted on by the pandemic. They're maybe not getting the opportunities that they previously would have in a normal year. And really this paper and these interventions are around about how we address that. So you can see in the background there are a couple of strands to this. So we've got the Youth Guarantee Grant offer, which was received in November to the tune of 1.6 million. The issue with that particular grant offer is that they set us a little bit of a challenge in that the funds must be spent or committed this financial year. So that is given us a challenge in terms of creativity about how we make sure that has the most beneficial impact for that age range. The other strand of funding that came in was the Kickstart funding, which was also targeted at 16 to 24-year-olds, available from the UK government. And that's designed to support, in particular, work placements and job opportunities. So we've been successful again there in obtaining 2 Kickstart bids. One is a gateway host, so that's an opportunity there for small and medium-sized enterprises to take up placements. But we've also got a successful bid in our own right as an employer for 50 new and additional council posts. On top of that, I think most experts are predicting an increase in redundancies, particularly when the job retention scheme concludes. And even from when we wrote this report, there's a further extension to that particular scheme. But there's significant concern now about the potential for rising numbers of redundancies. So we've got funding that has been ring-fenced, in particular for the creation of a single point of contact post within each of the councils. And we've taken the opportunity to do that for ourselves. So in order to put together a proposal, we've been quite creative. So we've used both strands of money. So on the Youth Guarantee funding, we've appointed key workers to facilitate employability support for affected young people. And really we've aligned that along 2 different teams, one based in education resources, focusing on 16, 17-year-olds. And they'll work very closely with the developing the young workforce activity that's already strongly supported within education. The second team, based within our own employability team in finance and corporate resources, will focus, and pardon me, for the older group of young people, so those up to 24, those of us that are well beyond that, obviously take a deep breath at that point. So we'll focus on the older group of young people, but we'll also focus on the administration and compliance element of the schemes. The Kickstart opportunities within the council are 50 additional temporary opportunities, and we're going to target that towards unemployed young people aged 16 to 24. And this is where we've got a bit creative. So the grant conditions for the Kickstart vacancies are limited to 25 hours a week for 26 weeks and to be paid at the national minimum wage. And we're using our Youth Guarantee funds to wrap around that for each of those vacancies within the council, creating opportunities that are of a longer duration, so much better in terms of being able to sustain employment. So up to 52 weeks, paid at the living wage, as you would expect. We're committed to living wage within the council. So that's a good thing to be doing, and for up to 35 hours as well. So given a much better offering round about that, and we're doing that in particular with our identified council vacancies. And if that's not enough, we are expecting a further grant award of Youth Guarantee funding in the next financial year, by which time, hopefully, fingers crossed, we've all got a bit less in the way of restrictions and we'll have more facility to offer out placements within businesses. So that as I'm sure you can understand, is a bit of a constraint at this point in time. As I've said, 4.5 just takes you through the fact that we do have, I think, a significant number of people on furlough, and it is unfortunately not all of those will come out of furlough back into employment. Some absolutely may be affected by redundancy, and we're focusing our efforts there. So I'm just bringing this report back to committee, because we obviously took some very quick action there to make sure we maximised our use of the funding. But as you said, Chair, it's a bit of good news. So let's a bit like the news item. Let's end on a positive. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Kay. Is there any questions? Can we agree to note the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Next item is urgent business. I don't have any urgent business, and I would just like to thank all attendees. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and our clerk can stop the recording now. Carol.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks.